You may have seen this viral mini shoulder bag on social media or on the street somewhere, or even noticed one of the 11 new stores that opened in the US in 2024. In a saturated retail market, Japanese Uniqlo is an outlier. In fiscal year 2014,
Yeah, this brand seems to have gone crazy a while back. I'm actually not sure if it's as popular as it was in 2, 3 years ago. But I know on Reddit, for instance, this is like the go-to apparel brand. Like, you should just buy every single item of clothing from this store, according to some various subreddits. So it's definitely taken on sort of like this cult following in America.
the company's international business brought in $2 billion in revenue. 10 years later, that number reached $11 billion.
Uniqlo's success lies in its ability to offer essential basics that are timeless, the kinds of things that you want to have in your closet, regardless of what's going on with trends.
After initially launching in 2005 and shutting down within a year, the international segment has brought in over 20% in operating profits over the past 3 years. In its most recent quarter, the company's operating profits rose to just under $1 billion and maintained its forecast for a fourth consecutive year of record earnings. However, sales growth in China declined due to what parent company Fast Retailing said was unseasonably warm weather. In 2021, it became the most valuable clothing company by market capitalization. As of January 2025, Uniqlo is the second largest, trailing Zara owner Inditex. CNBC took a closer look at Uniqlo to learn more about the quiet retailer's success, how it differentiates itself from competitors, and see why CEO Tadashi Yanai considers the brand a tech company and not a fashion company. Uniqlo opened its first store in Hiroshima, Japan in 1984. It was originally called Unique Clothing Warehouse, and the parent company, originally named Men's Shop Agoro Shoji, now Fast Retailing, is one of Japan's biggest retailers. It owns a total of 9 brands, including Helmut Lang, Theory, J-Brand, and GU. 2000 was a breakthrough year for the company. Its 1900 yen fleece apparel campaign, which at the time was equal to about $15, was a massive success for the company. It sold 2 million units in 1998, 8.5 million in 1999, and 20 million in 2000. Overall sales grew 459% between 1997 and 2001, which led to its global expansion, first in London, then Shanghai. Uniqlo then opened its first US store in 2005 in New Jersey, but problems like low brand recognition and weak differentiation caused it to shutter its stores within a year. The brand was back in the US in 2012. It plans to reach more than...
That is actually pretty interesting, because I had no idea this brand existed in 2005. I'm not really big into fashion myself, but I remember this being more in the late 2010s and early 2020s that I feel like Uniqlo really became a huge thing here, and this makes sense. This was maybe their second attempt at it, and so they learned from their earlier mistakes into the US market.
200 stores in North America by 2027, nearly triple its current store count. Fast Retailing CEO Tadashi Yanai is now Japan's richest person with a net worth of $44.6 billion. Yanai unseated SoftBank leader Masayoshi Son as the country's wealthiest in 2019. Fast forward to today, in just the last 4 years, its international business has largely outpaced its domestic. Uniqlo's claim to fame is its minimalistic, durable, and functional style. Its stores very much display the aesthetic.
Uniqlo, increasingly over the last 20 years, but maybe in particular the last 10 years, have been very fit for our times. And what do I mean by that? They provide functional basics, decent design, uncluttered stores, a color palette that kind of probably speaks to most of us.
It kind of operates in its own little world because retailers have been kind of trained to respond to the latest trends very quickly. And of course that works, and there's always going to be a customer for those types of stores. But to find a retailer that's just focused on the everyday essentials and offering you every color and fit of those everyday essentials, then they are in a league of their own.
Its heat tech and airism lines have become the company's staples. The heat tech collection exceeded 1.5 billion in cumulative unit sales through 2022, 19 years after the brand launched the collection. Airism, once called Silky Dry for men and Seraphine for women, has done well for the brand too.
We've all been there where we're wearing something in the summer, a cotton t-shirt or cotton pants that are just making us sweat. They're heavy. You're not wicking away moisture. It's not breathable. Uniqlo has an offering for people like that. It solves that pain point, which is one of the reasons why it's been such a winner.
The company says product launches are based on a deep focus on customer feedback. During a November presentation, the company highlighted this two-way communication, where consumers asked for a sweater that didn't itch. Uniqlo responded by developing souffle yarn knitwear. It's become a favorite.
Uniqlo is a very customer-centric organization. It listens very actively to customers, whether it be via social media, via feedback surveys, or indeed by people talking to associates in stores. It gathers all of that feedback and it really implements that in terms of how it designs products, how it comes up with new iterations. And that's really important for Uniqlo.
So something they haven't really mentioned here, they've mentioned how certain categories have been successful. I think they mentioned fleece and basically their summer wear. Something that I noticed, at least when I first caught on to this brand, was I believe one of the big things that they were touted for were their quality at a low price point. And so I think usually in a few various areas that when these were being ranked or assessed for quality against other shirts or pants, etc., especially at least on the men's side, I saw that they often weren't the lowest quality, but they were sometimes practically the cheapest or very close to being the cheapest. But they were probably like almost mid on quality, maybe low mid for quality range, but then they were very far onto the low end for price. And so I feel like in a lot of cases, at least when I first saw them, they were being touted as sort of this breaking point of once you go past Uniqlo quality, you usually have to pay multiples on the cost for a bit more quality for that particular item or garment. And so that was one of the things that stood out to me, where so many folks just say, these are the best. I spend $10 on this item. I bought 12 of them, whatever it was. And so I'm surprised they haven't referenced that yet. That seems to be one of the most unique things. And I think that is a great place to have been post-COVID with inflation. Because if you're doing a good bang for your buck on clothing items, people who have been more price sensitive post-COVID, I think are going to start leaning towards those brands. And they haven't really mentioned that aspect. They've sort of just mentioned fleece and summer wear. But at least this is why this brand stands out to me. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with this brand or shop here, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts down in the comments below.
Uniqlo excels at the in-store experience. Walking through a location, it's clear the company places a priority on cleanliness and order. The in-store experience garnered enough attention that the Chicago location received the Business Impact of the Year award from Chicago's Magnificent Mile Association, one of the area's most active business associations. The Japanese retailer has since closed the store. It has another location a mile away.
Their in-store experience is a primary marketing channel in itself because, in fact, you don't see much marketing outside the stores.
Data shows that 72% of consumers still shop in-store over online. So the idea of making your store the main marketing channel is something many retailers are emphasizing, including Uniqlo.
When you enter into a Uniqlo store, you're obviously captivated by the large windows. It's also very bright. It comes what we call the very modern light in retail. But the stores are also very uncluttered. They are easily divided between genders, between seasons, between what items you're gonna get at. Everyone is friendly.
That is a good point. I'm just going to go back a little bit so we can see the store here. But I agree with them on this point. They have a very sleek design at Uniqlo. And I'm not sure if this is something they're proactively managing. But you can see here, like even in this photo, how they have all these sweaters or shirts all neatly stacked in presumably color and size order. I feel like at other retail stores, their items kind of get out of sorting order fairly quickly. I do feel like Uniqlo, maybe it just happened to be the times that I was there, or maybe this is something they're intentionally cognizant of and actively trying to remedy, is that they don't really have clothes like all over the place. Like nobody like messed up this gradient of color over here. Because this is something that you see at other stores, is somebody will take this pink one, put it next to the green one while they're shopping. Maybe they're comparing them and then they won't put it back. And then this aesthetic is ruined. I feel like most of the stores that I've gone into for Uniqlo all do look pretty pristine and well maintained. And so this must be something that they are proactively looking for. And I agree, their organization stuff is quite well in their category. But I'm not sure if that alone is the main reason why that they are standing out. I don't know, maybe everyone has their own preferences. Again, for me, I think having the colors makes sense. I think if you can get a particular item Nothing's worse than not being able to buy the one that fits you or the color or tone that fits you. So having a variety would be useful. And it likely increases your margins because sometimes, I know I do this once in a while, unfortunately, and sometimes I'll shop for an item and say, oh, I really like this item. How many colors are there? There'll maybe be 3 colors, and I'll say, okay, why not? Let me get one of each color. If you do that here at Uniqlo, you might go from having 3 shirts or 3 sweaters to having 6, 7, 8, 9 sweaters just in one of each color that they sell. And so that could also be another purchasing behavior tactic that they're trying to get into, which is folks are thinking about, oh, will I get this color later? Like, should I get it now since I like this sweater? Let me just get one of each. And then if you have more variety, then that increases your particular purchase order. So those would be things I would love that they dig into a little bit more. I think high level, just having a nice looking store, arguably you could say about so many other brands, like luxury brands, for instance, they haven't even covered the price point of Uniqlo. But for luxury brands, their stores are amazing. Like, they're way less cluttered. They highlight their goods much better. I think overall those would be noticeably better experiences, but they're not highlighting how those brands are taking off right now. So I feel like they're sort of ignoring some key aspects, at least in my opinion.
I get that. Everyone is friendly. There's no boxes flying around in the aisles. And it's not too complicated to go into a Uniqlo store.
Uniqlo uses RFID technology or radio frequency identification as part of the checkout process. It allows customers to pay for items without any scanning. No tags, no barcodes, a streamlined process.
When you go to Uniqlo stores, you notice a lot of innovations.
Oh, that is actually pretty cool. I clearly haven't been to enough Uniqlo stores because I don't think I've seen this experience myself. I have not had this thing where I put clothes into like this box and then it knows what clothes are in there. I think all of the experiences I have had, there's been a cashier or the person you go to checkout for, and then they ring everything up. But that looks very cool.
Things that set it apart from other retailers. For example, when you go to the checkout at a lot of their stores, you don't necessarily need a cashier to ring up every individual item. They have these bins where you can put all of your clothes into one bin and it automatically reads QR codes that are in the tags, and it just automatically knows every single item that you have in there.
H&M and Zara are some other retailers that have adopted such technology. RFID tech as a whole has been around for a while, but advances in the technology have increased retail adoption. 93% of retailers are using the radio frequency tech in some fashion. Local activations is another emphasis of Uniqlo's.
The Uniqlo experience that I would expect to have in Barcelona, in Tokyo, or New York City, it has to be all in all the same thing. But obviously, when you have a local face showing up in the store in activation campaigns, I, as a Chinese, as an American, I feel that the brand speaks to me and it's kind of understand my culture, and that's what you need to do.
Uniqlo stores sell clothing made by local artists and businesses.
Uniqlo is very good at localness, and most of the products are international. They sell across the world, but there is a fraction of them that they change up from store to store, and they make sure that there is a local flavor.
So this is a really great point that I didn't realize myself, which is that they have this local flair. This could be something that makes them stand out from their competition. Again, they highlighted that the majority of their items are sold throughout locations, but having just something that's slightly unique to your area might just add a little bit of character to a store and make you slightly more interested. So this does seem like a value add to me that could make it a differentiator in the market, but I'm not sure if it accounts for Uniqlo becoming so big so quickly.
Now that's important because tastes can vary locally, but it's also important because it makes the stores feel very grounded and very relevant to each location. It really shows that Uniqlo is thinking about local markets.
Personalized and interactive demos enhance customer loyalty. The Uniqlo Studio allows customers to tailor or hem their Uniqlo products. Uniqlo's road ahead isn't all clear. Competition from popular retailers like Gap and H&M, its lagging e-commerce operation, and an unclear succession plan are all some of its challenges ahead.
There is a risk that retailers like Gap could find their feet again, and that may put...
Yeah, it's interesting that they brought this up. I feel like Gap has sort of come up in the last year or so. I'm not sure if that's just anecdotal or not, but I feel like Gap used to be like a very early 2000s thing, maybe late 90s store, like everyone would go here. And I feel like I haven't really thought about them in a while, but for some reason this last year, I feel like they have stood out to me more. I'm not sure if they're changing their practices, updating their marketing or their clothing lines, but it is interesting that I haven't really thought about this company at all in like almost 2 decades. And this year, they've sort of got more onto my radar and that they're being referenced here. I do think they have some potential here. I believe they also have other brands under the same umbrella that have a variety of quality and price points. And so this is where Gap, I think, is on the lower end that's more price sensitive. And so, but they have decent quality. And I think that's, again, one of the key things that I think makes Uniqlo great is that you're getting a good bang for your buck. It might not be the highest quality, but you're going to get pretty decent quality compared to some random store that you could just walk into and get like a $10 shirt, for instance. And so it's interesting that they brought this up. I don't know if I feel the same way about H&M. I feel like those and other fast fashion brands, I feel like sort of lost popularity in the last year or two personally. But again, I don't really stay on top of fashion trends, but I feel like they were all the rage when they first came out. But I feel like there was the like anti fast fashion trend that followed like a couple of years after their stardom came, where people are against sort of the waste and how quickly they change things and the low quality of those items. And I feel like that's where they've kind of dropped off a bit, where their prices are pretty similar to what you might get at a Uniqlo or a Gap, but I feel like their quality isn't as much since they're not expected to last as much. So it's curious to see these kind of all highlighted here. I wish they used data. Maybe that'll come up soon.
More pressure on Uniqlo. You also, of course, have the rise of some of the fast fashion players like Shein and Temu, and whilst they're in a
Yeah, these are definitely the new fast fashion kings and queens, in my opinion, because they're just so much cheaper than something that like an H&M or someone else would have. I feel like H&M really caught on because they were so noticeably cheaper than other retailers at that point. But if you go to like Shein or Temu, they're like on a whole other scale. Like you could get some clothing for like $2. And so there's basically no one else that's going to compete with them, but they are certainly on the lowest end of the quality in many cases, or at least that should be your expectation, buying something for $2. But oftentimes it'll be just as good as something you buy for $10 or $20. But again, it's not going to be like a medium or high luxury item, but they are certainly the top runners in fast fashion in my mind right now. And I think H&M and some of those other ones are sort of in this weird no man's land where they aren't the cheapest and they're not that good of quality. And so there's no real reason to go after them when you could get something that's cheaper, about the same quality, or you could go slightly higher and then get something of noticeable better quality. So I think those are starting to die out, in my opinion. And I think that trend will continue with this competition. So they'll either have to fight to get higher quality or start to compete with these much cheaper alternatives.
Slightly different segment because they tend to be much more about disposable fashion. They are moving into the arena, so Uniqlo's not going to have an easy time of it going forward. I think they can still remain distinct, and I think that they have a very strong position, but there are definitely threats on the horizon.
Zara, owned by Spanish Inditex, Swedish H&M, and the United States Gap are all Uniqlo's direct competitors, and the company lags far behind them all in e-commerce.
One of the areas where Uniqlo could do a little bit more is with e-commerce, especially in the US, because it doesn't have a huge number of stores and therefore it sort of punches under its weight in terms of the number of consumers it can reach. So it could use e-commerce as a vehicle to really...
That is an interesting point. These aren't very prevalent throughout the US, but I do think one of the good things they have going for them is that I feel like they're in a lot of the more fashion forward areas. Like you would definitely find Uniqlo in like New York City, for instance. And so that might be something that adds to the prestige and the uniqueness, which is like you can go to an area where you might be able to walk a block and go to a luxury brand and pay a lot of money, and then walk in the other direction and go to a Uniqlo where it's way cheaper and it seems almost like it could be in that category and it's still pretty rare. So that could also be part of the appeal, is that it's still a rare item. I'm not sure if Uniqlo would be as prevalent or catching on as much if it was sort of ubiquitous and it was like in every small mall across America. Then it might just become standard and it might lose some of that appeal to their customer base, but I'm not sure how those trends directly impact each other. But I do think that is something that stands out to me, is that these are usually in really high metro areas where there's a lot of high cost of living. Usually it's next to other aspirational stores, and I think that really makes it stand out.
Fill in those gaps as it opens more stores.
In 2023, Uniqlo announced its goal to reach 200 stores in the US by 2027. As of February 2025, it has 69. That means 131 more stores in just 3 years.
Of course, they're gonna be careful not to overexpand, and we have seen that back in history. The history books are full of that, when brands suddenly became kind of everyday brands for people, and they got a little tired of it. But I think they have a longer leeway for Uniqlo in order to reach that.
Fast retailing CEO Tadashi Inai is looked at as a visionary. However, he's 75, and any great company has to consider a qualified succession plan.
So much of a company's success is based on management. It doesn't matter how great your product is or how great your stores are. If you're managed poorly and if your balance sheet and your growth plans aren't managed appropriately by that CEO and its team of executives, then you're going to crash and burn. So for a company like Uniqlo that does have a 75-year-old CEO at the helm, if they're not succession planning already, then that's a huge risk for the company.
Succession is always a concern, but this is something that Uniqlo will have on its radar. And there is a very strong brand vision that goes beyond Unite.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, please hit like or subscribe. I'll see you around.